Happy New Year! What, too early? Hi entrepreneurs, I'm Vicky Brown, and you're in the right place if you want to engage your team, boost your business, and grow your leadership muscle. So, effective January 1st, the new California minimum wage, well, that's going to be $16.50 per hour for all non-exempt employees. Now, that means everyone from your receptionist to your warehouse staff, your retail associates to your junior analysts. If they're non-exempt, they'll need to be at $16.50 or above, period. Now, here's where it gets tricky. You need to make absolutely sure that this change is reflected in your payroll system for every single pay period starting January 1, 2025. Not January 2nd, not the first pay period after January 1st, January 1st. That means if the pay period starts the last week of December and ends a week into January, you'll have to math a bit, because all the hours worked in December can be at the old rate. Of course, you could bump them up early if you wanted to, but any hour worked January 1st or later has to be at or above the new minimum wage rate. Why am I being so adamant about this? Well, because, my friends, the state of California doesn't mess around when it comes to wage and hour laws. They're not going to give you a grace period or a pat on the back for trying your best. If you're late, even by a day, you could be looking at penalties, back pay, and a whole host of legal headaches that, trust me, you do not want. And let's not forget about the ripple effect. If you're bumping up your minimum wage workers to $16.50, what about the employees who were already making $16.50 or $17? You might need to adjust their wages too to maintain your pay scale structure. It's not just about compliance, it's about fairness and morale. So let's talk about your exempt employees. You know, those team members who are salaried and don't get overtime? Well, their annual salary needs to hit at least $68,640. That's not a random number I pulled out of thin air. It's exactly twice the new minimum wage for full-time work. And again, the state is not playing around with this. Oh, by the way, did you hear that part about full-time? That means you can't do some sort of proration calculation for someone that works part-time. If they're exempt, even if they only work 5 hours a week, they still need to clear that $13.20 each week. Now, you might be thinking, my exempt team members are already making good money. Well, I hate to tell you, but good money and legally compliant money aren't always the same thing. You need to go through your records with a fine-tooth comb and make sure every single exempt employee is hitting that $68,640 mark. And if you find that you've got exempt employees making less, well, you've essentially got two choices. One, you can bump up their salary to meet the new threshold. Or two, you can reclassify them as non-exempt. And unfortunately, neither of these options is as simple as it sounds. If you're bumping up salaries, again, consider the ripple effect. What about the employee already making $68,640 or slightly above? Yeah, you might need to adjust their salaries too. And reclassifying? Well, that's a whole can of worms. You're looking at changing how you track their time, how you calculate their pay, and potentially how you structure their job duties. Plus, employees often see being moved from exempt to non-exempt as a demotion, even if it does come with overtime eligibility. So you'll need to manage that perception carefully. And unfortunately, if you don't do this right, if you keep calling employees exempt when they don't meet the salary threshold, you're looking at potential misclassification claims. I'm talking about owing back overtime, penalties, and possibly facing a lawsuit. And all this is a headache you do not want. So here's my advice. Start reviewing your exempt employee salaries now. Don't wait until December 31st to figure this out. If you need to make changes, whether it's raising salaries or reclassifying employees, you want to give yourself plenty of time to do it right. Communicate with your employees, update your systems, and make sure everything is in order well before January 1st even rolls around. And don't forget about those lovely notices and postings. The updated minimum wage order is going to need to be displayed prominently where your employees can easily see it. So no tucking it away in some corner of the break room behind the vending machine. Put it somewhere your team can't miss it. You also need to update your employee wage statements. That means every single impacted pay stub needs to reflect the new rates. Once you update payroll, that should take care of it. But don't forget about those wage theft prevention notices. They need to be updated too. And here's a pro tip. If the only thing changing is the rate, then you actually don't have to redistribute the wage theft notice to your existing employees. But you do need to have the correct rate on the form for all your new hires. So, you feel like you have state compliance down pat. Well, California is a big state, and different cities and counties, well, they often have their own minimum wage laws. And guess what? If your local minimum wage is higher than the state's, you've got to go with the higher rate. So do your homework. Check what's happening in your city, your county. Don't assume that just because you're following state law, you're in the clear. Now, on to those employee handbooks and written policies. By the way, when was the last time you actually read through yours? If you're like most business owners, it's probably been a while. Well, now's the time. They may need to be updated to reflect the new minimum wage too, and while you're in there, take a good hard look at your pay scales and wage structures. Do they still make sense with the new minimum wage? You might need to make some adjustments to keep things fair and competitive. And lastly, let's talk about your managers and supervisors. These folks are your front line, so they need to be thoroughly trained on all of this. I'm talking about the new rates, the new policies, how to handle questions from employees, the whole 9 yards. And this training shouldn't just be about rattling off new numbers. It's about understanding the why behind the changes. Your managers need to be able to explain these updates to their teams in a way that makes sense. They need to be able to handle any pushback or confusion because let's face it, changes to pay can be sensitive. And remember, your managers are often the face of your company to your employees. And if they're fumbling through explanations or giving out wrong information, well, that reflects poorly on your whole organization. So invest the time in training them properly. It'll pay off in a smoother implementation and happier team members. So, to put a bow on it, in the end, all of these steps, the postings, the policy updates, the local research, the training, they're all part of being a good leader. Because good leaders are responsible and law-abiding. So don't take the chance and just try to fly under the radar. Besides, as leaders, we set the tone for our organizations. If we're not on top of these changes, how can we expect our teams to take them seriously? This isn't just about avoiding fines or lawsuits, though those are certainly good reasons, but it's about showing our team that we value them and their work, and that we're committed to following the law. So, no excuses, no delays. Get those payroll systems updated, get your notices in order, make any necessary adjustments. Let's start 2025 off on the right foot. Your employees and your bottom line will thank you for it. Hi, I hope you're liking the content. I know it's a lot, and if your first thought when you're faced with an HR issue is, a little help here, then you might want to take a look at the LJE Masterclass. The Masterclass is a learning path for entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs who find themselves with HR responsibility in their companies. Listen, if you're anything like me, you spend your time living, eating, and breathing your company. And I know you don't have time for some long, all-encompassing course in human resources. After all, you don't want a PhD in HR. No, you just need the answer to your question, and you need it now. Well, that's what the LJE Masterclass is for. Designed by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, it's an online learning path and, most importantly, resource. Sure, we have bite-sized video lessons on each subject, but you can also just go right to the step-by-step at the end of each section. And in fact, we also give you workflows, any and everything possible to let you get in, get the answer, and get out as quickly as possible. Just select the Entrepreneur Learning Path at leadersjourneyexperience.com. And don't worry, you got this. And we've got you.